Bueno, muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to all of you who are here in Latin America. This is our afternoon. Good evening for those of you that are online from Europe or in areas around the world where it is later at night. We are thrilled to formally start our 14th edition of CLISE, this seminar, our 24th edition. We are beginning with the week. It started on Tuesday with the Ibero-American Network and this morning with Service Learning on Art. If you weren't able to follow, it is there on our YouTube channel. Please do sign on for that channel. Do subscribe. You will get notifications when there's new channels. The plenary session for these opening remarks and the inaugural conference, as will be the case for the next few days, is being broadcasted live in 3 languages. This video is being translated into English and Portuguese, additionally to the original broadcast in Spanish for all over the world. And this will be made available to everyone who have signed in to participate and to the general audience if you wish to share it with colleagues whom you think might be interested in our seminar. Please do share this because we want to be big numbers, many of us that will follow. You can always follow conferences on YouTube. They are open. Some simultaneous sessions on Thursday and Friday will have a limited number of participants. Participants have received links, but worry not about that because the rest of the sessions will be posted on YouTube and it will stay on. If you want to go back to CLISE YouTube channel, you will always be able to watch it because it will remain on our channel. We had a number of participants who have signed on. That was overwhelming. Of course, having a face-to-face meeting is wonderful and it is irreplaceable as we've done in the last 20 years. But having this remote possibility allows us to have many more people signing on. I'd like to say send special greetings to our colleagues that have signed in from all over the world, lots of teachers and professors who are meeting right now at Bosnia Herzegovina. They are broadcasting via streaming and it is being translated to the local language. Additionally to these 3 open languages, thanks to the Central and Eastern European network, we have translation into the local language. This is the first experience for CLISE considering this language, and we hope that this will continue to be the case in the future. With these practical announcements, do please register for the channel. Those that have registered, make sure you have received your links for the parallel sessions on Thursday and Friday. And now we will formally open the 24th International Seminar. On my virtual panel, I have Jorge San Martin, the president of CLISE Civil Association, who will be addressing the audience with a few remarks. Jorge, I give you the floor. Good afternoon to those that have joined us today. I'm Jorge San Martin. I'm honored to be the president of CLISE, a civil association, and a new seminar came along. As Kike was saying, it's the 24th edition. It's the 2nd year we have it in a virtual manner. On behalf of the directive committee, I'd like to thank everyone. It's a big effort and a wonderful commitment on the part of CLISE's team in organizing and preparing such an impressive international event. We will have 3 days to share experiences and lessons that will result in a better service to our colleagues. This year, we would like to thank the directors of schools, teachers, students, community leaders who did not stop vis-a-vis difficulties. They were eager to be there out for more in such difficult times. And when it comes to these issues, I'd like to share a few remarks in connection to something that I read that is quite applicable, not just to the times we are living through, but also in connection to the organization class I have the privilege to preside over. There is a Lebanese author, Nassim Taleb, who moved to the United States and got the citizenship there. He wrote in 2010 a book called The Black Swan. You may all have heard this expression. It is understood that we are in front of a black swan when something unexpected happens, the occurrence of which substantially modifies the status quo. It brings about unexpected changes and impacts, which, if not adequately planned, might even end up with activities of organizations and companies. I have no doubt that COVID-19 pandemic, which is already COVID-20 and COVID-21, and it seems to be never ending, it's a one big black swan we are all faced with. Assessing the impact is something that is felt individually on our skin. We feel it because of our loved ones and our families. So we have to spare comments in connection to impacts. The same author published 2 years later another book, yet another book, that approached a concept that was quite a novelty to me. Anti-fragility, that's the concept. It is easy and kind of clear to understand and define when something is frail, yet never did I hear any concept, any definition of anti-fragility. And it is related to the black swamp and how you relate to the black swan. A dramatic change can cause organizations to collapse. We know how many organizations and businesses that have collapsed during this time. These unpredictable facts can also keep organizations under a survival mode, that is, trying to see how they go about subsisting, trying to strike a very unstable balance. These changes can also turn organizations resilient, a term that has been a buzzword during the last few years. That is, organizations that can adjust and overcome change and then stand on their feet. But there also are organizations that can enhance their powers in view of uncertainty or chaos. These are anti-frail or anti-fragile societies, and this is the novelty of the concept. For people or organizations who have this quality, uncertainty is not to be construed as a negative aspect. Problems, difficulties are opportunities to show their skills and to overgrow them. To the anti-frail people or organizations, they are benefited by crisis because they can perform better, hone their skills, and then move about with more peace of mind and conviction. Amidst changes, as we are living through radical changes, it is evident that there's companies that take advantage of uncertainty as an opportunity to explore new ways to do business and to work. Not only did they resist the crisis, but they have reached a higher level. So to each one of those participating today in this seminar, we have to acknowledge they do have that quality. To teachers and to students that engage in service learning, they did not stay put. They kept working in service learning projects, or they invented new ones in order to face up to the new challenges. In this situation of radical changes, as the ones we are living through with the advent of the pandemic, I myself noticed that CLICE, the organization I preside over, clearly fits this category. CLICE has taken advantage of uncertainty with a lot of effort, yet with a lot of ingenuity, with creativity, as an opportunity to explore new ways of carrying forward its purpose and its job. So not only did they resist and adjust to crisis, but they reached a higher level. From this seminar, that, as Enrique said, historically had a turnout of 600 or 700 people already beginning last year, the first year we had it virtual. And on this second year, we have transformed the event, making it 4 times bigger with 2,800 people who have registered, reaching this year to 63 countries, a seminar that will have several formats: virtual, hybrid, and face-to-face. CLICE is also undertaking the organization of the global program to provide support to Catholic universities, Uniservitate, without a single trip. This might have seemed impossible or unthinkable when we started the program, but it was feasible to run it globally in all 5 continents with excellent characteristics. Programs have been conducted at a national level with our ally networks in countries such as Brazil, Peru, Paraguay, Mexico, Colombia, and of course, Argentina. Regional programs such as that of promoting service learning on arts in South America and the promotion of service learning in Central Europe and in Eastern Europe are other examples. As an organization, we keep supporting remote courses, the career program we carry out with the ILO, and the promotion of dissemination material and training material. I would like to thank the Organization of Ibero-American States for having supported the conduct of this seminar. Internally, we have worked in order to carry out a better dynamic, a better communication, effective communication with our member organizations. And looking for a more powerful organization is part of the agenda of our purposes. An organization that consists of people. We have worked in a joint manner. We have included new participants with whom, in many cases, we didn't even have the chance to meet them, but we believe that bonds in CLICE have become strengthened vis-a-vis adversity by trying to find new ways to approach the task at hand. This is just some sort of preliminary reflection as the initial kickstart for this event. I hope you have a wonderful event. I hope you enjoy the fora, the special presentations, learning opportunities, and your personal training. We will now move on to the next session. It will be a video that will be featured, prepared by Luis Calzo, the director of the Organization of Ibero-American States, from his office. Thank you.
Espacio de encuentro sea también una solución de continuidad en el marco de las distintas acciones que realiza CLICE en la promoción y desarrollo del aprendizaje y servicio solidario. Creo que la pandemia nos ha abierto 3 ámbitos de reflexión importantes, donde me parece que CLICE y que el enfoque de aprendizaje y servicio solidario tiene mucho para aportar. En primer lugar, y no voy a ahondar en esto, ha expuesto las grandes dificultades y desigualdades que tienen los sistemas educativos en nuestra región, las carencias para enfrentar una circunstancia como la que hemos transitado. No quisiera detenerme en estas dificultades. Lo segundo es que ha generado en el deseo de aprender y de enseñar un gran espacio para el desarrollo de la creatividad de docentes, directivos y funcionarios jurisdiccionales que tuvieron que encontrarle la vuelta a mantener el contacto y el vínculo con la escuela y con el aprendizaje. Esto se expresó en el uso de distintas redes sociales, y servicios de mensajería, desde el WhatsApp, el Facebook y todas las herramientas digitales que están disponibles hasta opciones más creativas,
resources that are available, and more creative solutions where technology was not available or where there was no connectivity. So in that sense, it seems to me that we have a challenge ahead after the pandemic, where CLICE, as I said at the beginning, has a lot to contribute. And it has to do with recovering these experiences and adding value to them in order to improve educational systems so that we come out better after these circumstances with more learning. And finally, is that this has also allowed us to value education, and education was not occupying that space. Whatever the position we have adopted or we are adopting, for instance, with respect to face-to-face classes. The thing is that education has regained a space in the media, in the discussion about political leaders, about the managers of public policies, and in general in society. I think this allows us to create a proper environment to think and rethink some things that either have not worked during the pandemic or were not working before the pandemic. And also think not only of those things that were not working, but those things that were working but can be improved based on new experiences or new working technologies as the one that is implemented by CLICE. For the OEI, it is an institutional tradition to be present in these conferences. This was started in previous terms, so it's my responsibility to continue with this, and I do it with pleasure. I congratulate Nieves, Tapia, and all the team at CLICE. I wish them the best in this conference, and we will always be at your disposal to keep working together. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, this is technology. We're not used to this. We're used to being together in the same space. So we hope you were able to listen to Luis' video. I hope you've been able to receive the translations. Otherwise, we will be working on that later on. Now, what we have prepared is a series of videos with greetings from partner networks. Yesterday, we had a meeting of the Ibero-American Network of Service Learning. As you know, CLICE is located in Buenos Aires. It has an office in Uruguay, but it works from Latin America to the rest of the world. And our strategy is to work in articulation with national and regional networks in the various countries where we operate. So we don't believe in working on our own. We believe in working in coordination with others. That's why we've asked some partner networks to send us some greetings for all the participants. So let's see if we can see the video with the greetings.
My name is Betty President of Suleiman University in Dumaguete City. Our university is the Secretariat Institution for the Service Learning Asia Network, which covers a number of colleges and universities in East Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. My name is Betty Cernol McCann, President of Suleiman University in Dumaguete City, Philippines. Our university is the Secretariat Institution for the Service Learning Asia Network, which covers a number of colleges and universities in East Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. On behalf of the Service Learning Asia Network, I welcome you to this week-long International Service Learning Conference. May our learning communities of higher education and the world in which we interact with people of diverse backgrounds be a better place because of our context-based collaboration towards mutual understanding, respect, and concern for each other's welfare. thank you to the organizers, speakers, and participants of this conference. Greetings and welcome to you all.
Hola, hello from Africa. My name is Dr. Judith Pete, the Regional Coordinator, Service Learning in Africa. I am from Tangazo University College, the regional hub. I would like to pass our regards and love to Clay SS. And on behalf of my African colleagues, I would like to warmly welcome all the participants to our 24th International Conference on Service Learning. Aguante Clay SS, aguante Unisabitati.
Hello, everyone. Hello, dear teachers, representatives of partner organizations and institutions worldwide. Welcome to the 24th International Conference about Service Learning that is happening in the next 3 days. I'm so happy and pleased to welcome you on behalf of the Regional Network for Service Learning of Central and Eastern Europe. Also, congratulations to the CLICE team. Congratulations to their partners who convened this conference this year, even though the pandemic and everything unpredictable around us is still happening. I'm sure that in the next 3 days, you will be inspired. You will listen and present your practices, listen to the presentations and practices of other teachers worldwide. And through this, you will learn and grow and reflect on different aspects of service learning pedagogy in the practice. By this, I mean reflecting the participation of students, reflecting how learning is connected to the real community needs, and how everything is happening in this COVID pandemic situation. In the next 3 days, please connect, stay tuned, and also ask questions, clarify things, share your insights, because through this, our community of service learning practitioners will grow and strengthen. So stay tuned and looking forward to meet you all in the next 3 days.
Dear colleagues and friends, on behalf of the National Youth Leadership Council and the Iberoamericano Service Learning Network, I'm honored to welcome you to the 24th Annual International Service Learning Conference. Please allow me to warmly thank the organizers of this important international conference, my friends at CLICE, for giving me the privilege of welcoming and addressing you all. For me, it is truly an honor and a pleasure. I would also like to thank them for bringing us together despite the ongoing worldwide pandemic to discuss something we're all passionate about, service learning. You know, service learning is one of the most meaningful educational strategies known across the world. It is based in the central tenets of experience and democracy. John Dewey spoke about the need for students to experience education. He said, when the school introduces and trains each child of society into membership within such a little community, saturating him with the spirit of service and providing him with the instruments of effective self-direction, we shall have the deepest and best guarantee of a larger society which is worthy, lovely, and harmonious. I'm really concerned about the role that education plays in the future of not only the world's youth, but also the solutions that are needed to address all the challenges we are facing as a global community. Service learning can help address this concern by encouraging students to not only dream of a better future, but to create it. I'm so happy to be present in this gathering and to exchange views and share experiences with colleagues and friends from organizations and institutions from across the world. I truly wish all of you an amazing conference experience. Thank you.
Buenas tardes y un saludo desde la ciudad de
Good
Valencia.
afternoon. Greetings from Valencia, Spain. I'm Javier Torregrosa, the president of the Spanish Network of Service Learning. First of all, congratulations to CLICE for holding this 24th International Seminar on Service Learning. And my appreciation from all the Spanish network for the work you are conducting in the development and dissemination of service learning throughout the world. I hope this seminar achieves all its objectives and all those that participate can become true promoters of this way of educating that will eventually lead us to a fairer and better world. Welcome, all of you. Hello, everybody. Welcome, everybody. In this year, in 2021, from the Singularidades Institute, I'm the general coordinator of RISE, that is the Service Learning and Innovation Network in Brazil. And I'm here to welcome you all to the 24th International Conference on Service Learning. It will be held 25th, 26th, and 27th of August. This year, we have projects with some learnings in hybrid contexts, in higher education, and using this opportunity, we also have projects on service learning in the context of the pandemic, verifying what the challenges are and what the opportunities are for learning that this moment is offering, and also other projects that received awards for their innovation. So come participate with us right now to share thoughts about our role as agents for education in the process of teaching and service learning. So we'll see you during the sessions, and I wish you the best seminar.
No les cuento que contentos nos ponen estos saludos, porque la verdad es que trabajamos todo el año con estas redes y que sea un momento de encuentro.
We are so happy to receive these greetings. So having this moment of encounter, even at a distance, is fantastic for us. So thank you so much for all the networks that have sent their greetings. The Asian network, people from Kenya in Africa, Eastern Europe, Amy from the United States, our colleagues from the Spanish network, and finally the Brazilian network of service learning. So it's truly a joy for us to have these greetings that are for us, but also for all of you. So it's a pleasure. So we have started already, so we are more relaxed. I was a little tense at the beginning, but everything is flowing now. So we're going to finish the first opening block. I'm going to pass the floor to Dr. Graciela Vergara. She's the coordinator of education. She's here on behalf of the Minister of Education of Argentina, Nicolás Trota, and she's going to address the floor. Graciela. Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. Jorge, Nieves, and Enrique, through you, I would like to congratulate all the organizers. So again, this is a conference with a lot of participants, lots of countries participating, and also a lot of theory and policies and ideas are included, so it's very interesting. I'm a part of a government that, of course, has had to face the pandemic. Fully determined and knowing that the pandemic exposed and made visible something we already know, and that was the inequality in our populations. But that is not only in Argentina, that is, of course, from where I'm speaking, but we also know that in general, throughout the world, the pandemic has revealed and has put the focus on the unequal material conditions, and also highlighted in many of the responses the centrality of public policies and the central role of the governments to contain, to support, to respond to these situations of emergency. But we also know, and this is also part of the approach of the government I'm a part of, that public policies and the role of the government is generally not sufficient to precisely deal with and accompany and respond to these tremendous needs. As great numbers of people have become more vulnerable, and we truly believe that the virtuous articulation with social organizations, with different movements and different institutions, what we sometimes call civil society in general, is essential. To put it differently, the central role and the responsibility of the government, of course, is a priority. And in this sense, we repeat our firm determination and the commitment of the Argentine government to assume the reality of the pandemic and to deal with its consequences. And at the same time, and with the same determination, the need to have this virtuous articulation in the dialogue with these participatory and social traditions that in this case also have this institution, not only CLICE, but 24 conferences. That's also institutionality, this permanence in time. So my kind greetings for all that. And I wanted to refer to some of the concepts or some of the words that we think organize the responses to the pandemic, but we think that they also have to organize the post-pandemic, strongly recovering the concept of solidarity and recovering the concept of empathy, and recovering a concept that in the Argentine government is as an organizer of the policies that has to do with care. Care, that is care for people, the care for the other in their diversity, and the care policies as one of the priorities to create a government at a human scale. We know that the role of care has traditionally been thought as a feminine role, and in a way it has been assigned to women in the care of people, the care of the family, caring for the others. But we are working in a political direction to think of the caring as a right, people's rights to be cared for, and also the human possibility of caring for others. So thinking of the post-pandemic from this approach that I repeat, recovers an attribute that the stereotypes considered was a feminine role, when actually it's a human role. And that's how we need to face the policies for the future. And the other one is vis-a-vis processes that sometimes seem to be like a strong questioning of the policies, some anti-system processes, and even some systems that internationally are questioning the rights and the right-related policies. We also think that thinking jointly as a community how the field of the policies is the area from where the different citizen participations can not only defend rights, but also expand them. And this also applies to the post-pandemic, to, again, favor political agreements. And when I say political, I'm not speaking of political parties, but I'm speaking of political agreements, those big consensus that determine where societies move forward, and recover the debate of policies to defend rights and justice. Perhaps one reflection more related to the micro politics and the other more related to the macro politics. And I think that both are the dimensions that will be referred in the projects that will be shared here and the experiences that Nieves Tapia is going to refer to. So I know that this is going to be very successful. Enrique, don't worry, because it has started very well and it will continue that way. So just send my warm greetings to all of you and we will see you. Thank you so much, Graciela, for your words and for being here with us. The truth is that it has been a very intense year as to activities, and the promotion of service learning for us is still, of course, our priority. But clearly the pandemic has revealed many other things, and we keep working for education to be a factor for equal opportunities, to have access to education guaranteed for all, quality education, and education that is engaged with the community. And that's what we want to do through our service learning projects, and that's essential for us. So thank you, Graciela, for your words. I would also like to thank Jorge also for being with us. And well, if we were on a stage in one of the universities where we've held this conference before, I would ask you to get off the stage. But now I'm going to climb to this virtual stage to call Nieves Tapia. You all know her already, but we see that we have around 1,000 participants that are here for the first time. So I have to introduce Nieves, of course. Nieves is the founder and director of CLAES, the Latin American Center of Service Learning. Between 1997 and 2010, she started and coordinated the service projects in the Ministry of Education of Argentina. She's a teacher of history. She taught at the University of Buenos Aires, in Flaxo, and in high schools. She has given lots of courses and seminars in the 5 continents, and she has written several books and articles. She has been recognized with several international and national awards, and she's a founding member of IRSLICE, that is the International Association of Researchers on Service Learning. In 2019, she was appointed as a member of the Academy of Community Engagement Scholarship. And even if it doesn't say so in the bio, and I said this last year when I introduced her, apart from all this in her bio, she's a very generous person to share and to guide teams. I worked with her for over 20 years, and the truth is that beyond her bio, the most important thing and what better describes her is that her generosity as a person to share knowledge and experiences and to guide teams. So Nieves, the floor is yours for your opening lecture. Thank you, Kike. Thank you so much, Graciela, for your words. Thank you, Jorge, not only for your words, but for all your support on a day-to-day basis at CLAES. And welcome. I want to join these welcoming remarks from all the corners of the planet. The truth is that having seen the greetings from YouTube and the faces of our partners, of course, we miss the hugs, but we want to thank technology that allows us to keep working together. So as every year, I have to open this seminar with some reflections, and I'm going to share my presentation.
The topic of my presentation is the seminar topic. As you may have seen on the agenda on the program, we have thought in terms of a balance. It's, of course, provisional, but, well, this is after 2 years. What happened with service learning and education during the pandemic, and what can we begin to think when we soon hope to be back on what some people talk about or refer to as the new normal? So there are many who have registered for this seminar for the first time. So I will be making a very brief introduction because during all this while we've been talking about service learning without explaining what we are talking about. But many of the things that were stated during the welcoming remarks to our members also already hinted to what this means. We know that studying for a test is learning, and cooperating with soup kitchens or engaging in volunteer work is identified with solidarity. The pedagogical proposal of service learning, well, we have learning on the one hand, but we also have service on the other hand. So I will talk about an example that will be then shown on the seminar. The robotists are a group of students of José Manuel de Estrada High School in the north of Argentina. And it would be like some sort of science club focused on technology. But additionally to focusing on science and technology and devoting quite a number of issues or things to that topic, they focus a lot on community. And when the pandemic got started, children, when at the lockdown at home, started together with their teachers, conducting some research on which could be the safest mask models for healthcare professionals, for healthcare providers in town. So they did research, they found designs, they perfected them, they fitted them with renewable filters, and with 3D printers, the school received, they printed out these masks that they donated to the healthcare professionals of the local hospital. On this project, there is a very down-to-earth service fact. If you see how precarious the first few masks were that people were using in hospitals during the very beginning of the pandemic, of course, these sophisticated masks were very welcome at the hospital. But additionally to that, there's some contents in the subjects of the curriculum that we always abide by because we have to meet the goals. There are a number of things that have to do with these, with the curriculum, that were not just studied, but they deepened on their knowledge about that because they had to engage in this service learning project. So on that, it is a high motivation, but it is also one to develop competencies that education models for the 21st century say that we need to develop. Learning by doing, knowing how to intervene, how to communicate, and how to solve problems. All this is developed in a project of scientific and citizen training at the same time. When on the same project, we manage to combine all this, we're talking about quality service learning. And when it comes to that, then we can say that service learning is a modality of learning based on projects. It's a modality of problem-solving learning. And in the end, it is a modality of active pedagogies that so many times we study, but not always do we find the way to put them into practice. And in this seminar, we will find a number of excellent examples to find out how this is being carried out into practice. So tomorrow at 11 a.m. Argentina time, I do encourage you to listen to these guys. Of course, there's a number of activities that are known as projects, practical projects in universities, but this is done in the protected environment of the world of classrooms or laboratories. But in service learning, science reaches out the streets. Science turns into situated knowledge, and this is offered to the community. And I thought it was very timely to pay homage to these students, to these volunteers who in so many public universities in Argentina and around the world have gone out of their way to help the pandemic. These are students of Arturo Jaureche School of Medicine who are participating on testing procedures in the underprivileged neighborhoods in Buenos Aires. biochemistry students of Buenos Aires who have taken part in testing and analysis of people. So in all these experiences, whatever would have been done in the university lab on the benchtop was done in real life. At a level of professional practice, it has the same value, but when it comes to human practice, to service learning practice, to train professionals with a purpose of their profession to be of use to the others are undoubtedly irreplaceable situations. So many people practice service learning, even though they don't know that we call it that way. This is why we acknowledge service learning practices, whether you call them reach out, solidarity, school, or service-based school, you name it the way you want. Because of these three characteristics, there are activities that are focused on servicing. They are limited but effective in meeting real needs. They do so engaging in service with the communities. It's not just providing an aid to gain something in exchange. It is working with community. They are protagonized by students actively. That's the second characteristic, or by children, the youth, or people who are part of the organization, from the beginning down to the end. The third characteristic that tells service learning from other type of volunteer work is that here we know about the objective to transform reality. We know what we're going to do with the community, but much at the same time, we have learning goals that are planned with an intention behind. These might be curricular content, reflection on the practice so that it won't be naive reflection, research, as necessary to do what we will be doing with community in a good manner, and the field to develop competencies for citizenship and for work. I won't delve into the details of service learning, but I do encourage those of you who are approaching this subject for the first time to browse our webpage. There's a plethora of resources you can download for free, academic posts by renowned scientists and journals, manuals or notebooks in Spanish, English, and Portuguese, experiences as collected in series. And coincidentally, I'd like to make this plug here. There is suggested literature. You can download in a free manner, a book that I published in the year 2000, Solidarity as Pedagogy in Spanish, and a book I published in 2006 in Italian that is freely downloadable in a digital format. And as you know, policies are like a carousel. I mean, things go and come all the way around. And circles in ministries change often, too often. We have a section where all the publications by the Ministry of Education published on service learning since 1997 are available on that page, so you can download it from here for free. So what happened during the pandemic? Those that took part of this series last year might remember that at the onset of the pandemic, we wondered whether it would be ever possible for us to engage in service learning in this way. Working on site was at the center, and all of a sudden we were at a lockdown, confined and staying at home. How on earth would we go about it? In the very beginning, we thought about having this sort of map, with a map showing how people would like to contribute on this from their own point on the planet. Those on the map are just a few of them, of the thousands and thousands of projects that were developed as well during the pandemic. And if some of those participating here engaged in service learning projects during the pandemic and you didn't mark it on the map, you can do so by accessing CLAIS's webpage. Whatever did we learn about all these experiences and about what has happened to us over the last almost 2 years? These are provisional learnings, and this is based on what we know today because everything keeps on changing. But these are basically these things I would like to focus on. continuity of projects, especially the ones that are more institutionalized, the emergence of new ones, and that it was possible to open up the wide array of services that were offered by projects, even in times of pandemic, and not just around the healthcare emergency. The first issue is that we had to assess and we had to turn creative. We had to resort to our creativity to find out a solution to things because everything had changed. I mean, of course, overnight we had to change to teach through screens and not in the classrooms anymore. Well, this is a great example. This is Barriadas program. It started in 2003 by the National University of the Center of the Province of Buenos Aires. It's a program where teachers of different university programs provide support for educational inclusion in peripheral areas of the Tandil city. This support would be done on public libraries and virtually after the fact. But the project did not stop during the pandemic. Support moved on to the virtual world. When this year, the possibility to meet face-to-face opened up, it continued in a hybrid manner. Some support provided virtually and some support provided face-to-face. Many of those participating in this seminar can see themselves down this trail from face-to-face, teaching to virtuality and hybrid projects. Also at a school level, one of the projects that will be presented tomorrow during breakout session 5 on service learning on arts is the Tilcara High School in the north of Argentina, a school that is doing a lot in order to preserve musical traditions of Andean communities, how their instruments are manufactured and produced. And that kept moving even when students had to stay home. That went on in a virtual manner and then in a virtual manner between those that were able to attend school and those that had to keep staying home. Along those lines, it is important to highlight that many projects that were inherently face-to-face, as soon as we went back to meeting face-to-face and they found a way around, they did so with the necessary care and social distancing. I picked these images from kids of primary school of school number 25 at Futalaufken, Chubut, who for long years have contributed to growing plants together with the aid of national parks. These are seedlings of native plants to contribute to the reforesting of the Alerces National Park that has suffered from repeated fires or arson in the last few years. And children and teenagers at school have helped not just by planting or reforesting, but also by disseminating institutional writings on this process. They have planted already thousands of new trees. So there was continuity of quite a number of projects, especially those that had stayed on for longer, of course, found an easier way. But those projects that had continuity, well, you know, many new projects came along during the while that we had lived the last few years, and they followed the path that many of us teachers have done so, including new tools for virtual educational training. We learned to put together tutorials, webinars, and you know, I should say that many projects of virtual service learning during this while had as beneficiaries those kids that had more difficulty getting connected or getting online, children that had more difficulty to stay on in their educational process. There was this major deployment of technology that was made available to communities. It was put at their own disposal, and we will see how a few of these examples show that this is the case. Tomorrow, we will have the plenary session in the morning. We will focus on hybrid service learning. This is a new modality that has arrived to stay on. There were virtual services before the pandemic, but they might have been exceptional experiences maybe. Now we are back on the normal track of service learning, and it is interesting for us to know experiences around this. The third concept I wanted to allude to was that whenever we talk about what is it that we understand by service learning, we just say it is not just getting involved on campaigns. It is not taking care of people directly on an emergency. It's not fishing for people, but of course, in an emergency, we need to feed the hungry. But as the saying goes, rather than fishing, we need to let people fish and to let people learn to fish. And if you let them knowledges, on how to fish in the middle of the Sahara Desert, it would not be sensible. So we need for, a lake or a pond to be there available to people to learn how to fish rather than fishing for them. Service learning can embrace the whole range of service activities that has to do with the direct emergency care, processing knowledges, and the promotion of local learning processes. We wondered, especially early on in the pandemic, whether service learning would be reduced down to taking care of the emergency. That was the first thing that surfaced up. But in all countries, there were schools, there were universities, there were professional training institutes that started manufacturing face masks, sanitizing gel, caps, or food or meals for physicians that needed to eat on the go. And of course, people who helped the healthcare service through testings, such as on this picture, university students of a Peruvian university. They study engineering and they repaired ventilators because hospitals were running short of the stock. So of course, we did have service learning experiences in the pandemic. The chemistry lab was used to manufacture sanitizing alcohol. In mechatronic, they repaired the ventilators. But together with the direct care for the emergency, there was a big bulk, especially as months went by, of exchange and knowledge transfer. There were projects such as the one that will be discussed on Friday by the Rhodes University in South Africa on school support to underprivileged populations. Endless number of courses on the web where universities and schools transferred knowledge, children and teenagers teaching us tutorials on YouTube, or generating as the Mendoza School tools like this so that people on their mobiles would be connected to content. And many universities that were able to offer content, very down-to-earth content on the necessary knowledge that would be handy for the pandemic. And just like nutrition students of the Buenos Aires University were putting together recipes to feed the homeless in Buenos Aires, teachers were also using recipe books for soup kitchens and for other people who needed them badly. We could also contribute to local development in a very effective way in a number of different projects. I will only focus on one example by the Monterrey University in Mexico. There is a program that has been up and running for a few years. It's called Quimacul in Guanativa. It promotes micro entrepreneurs, empowering women with tools so that they can generate a livelihood, leaving behind vulnerability, where they live in contexts of high risks of family violence. They can undertake their own business, their own venture, their own economic activity that helps them, not just from a financial perspective, but also as a whole human being. The transition here from training courses that were in a face-to-face manner down to virtuality on Zoom. But there was quite a challenge there because these handcrafts that were made by these women would get sold on a Kimakul store at the campus of the university. The university had, fairs and events for Christmas to sell these items, but when the campus was shut, when people thought whether it would be possible for each of these women to keep selling their stock, creativity of students and teachers participating from Kimakul ended up in the creation of a virtual market. Kimakul was some sort of service-based free market on the web, featuring these handcrafts. And there was one especially for Christmas, so that these ladies would have the possibility to have access to new ways to trade their goods. Of course, this is not just an enriching experience for people in the project. It, of course, provides you the possibility of face-to-face trade and virtual trade, and it lets, women reach the best of levels for the 21st century. It involved new career programs, new specialties. People studying systems or design were also able to contribute to this project that, of course, has an impact on the local development, and that, of course, they can turn an ear to pay attention to what is going on. You would say it is easier for universities, but then schools also contributed the local development. They contributed to the local development, worried by the economic situation of the pandemic. These are the covers of websites and YouTube videos done by schools. You know that Moraleja in Spain promoted local trade, and a high school student in Mendoza, of course, he was very well protected to keep warm, because schools have to be very well ventilated, focused on natural fertilizers to promote sustainable agriculture. Some projects are more related to others, to service, but they continue to be important for social development. What have we learned from this process? As I said, these are provisional learnings, because we still are processing what we are going through and what will keep happening to us. Last year, and I do invite you to watch this on YouTube, because it is posted on our YouTube channel. Jose Maria Puig, a professor with the Barcelona University, one of the pioneers of service learning in Spain, talked about the ethics of care and how service learning is a tool that has to do with care. And in the afternoon, some of the participants, the Undersecretary Morade, talked about that. What do we construe of when we talk about a new ethics of care? Maybe like never before, in this pandemic, we showed the close connection between personal and collective responsibility, and how solidarity is a way of personal and reciprocal care. And we saw how personal irresponsibility created terrible collective damage, and it continues to cause them. So our service learning projects had to adapt to the ethic of care, and we have to see that healthcare measures have stayed on to linger on for a while, and we will have to get adjusted to doing things the way we want to do, but being a little bit more careful. And finally, I would like to linger on for longer here. I believe that this period allowed us to give renewed value to personal and community bonds. It helped us rethink how to grow and how to keep up service-based links that we see in our projects. I picked these three images because they are very representative. One of a girl who is participating in the school support program of the Barriada project. She's showing the student who is joining her pet, her bunny. These are things that cannot be represented in traditional classrooms. You know, it would have been on the library. She wouldn't have taken her pet. Sometimes, when immersed in the virtual world, we came in closer contact to people that wouldn't have been enabled otherwise. And it's good for us to keep growing that. The photo in the middle is from Sao Paulo, Brazil. It is a school where students that were able to go back to the classrooms produced with 3D printers plastic masks for the hospital workers. And those who, for health reasons, had to stay home, they would contribute to putting them together. And since we all had to stay home, parents included, then mothers and fathers that sometimes don't get so much involved with children projects, they were also participating from this service learning. And the last photo is one I love. He's the dean of the School of Dentistry of the University of Buenos Aires, together with so many other volunteers, went out to feed the homeless. In spite of the fact that pandemic bound or mandated people to stay home, he went out to the streets and he kept working with volunteers at UBA that helped people a lot. So this is the greeting between the homeless person and the dean. And that encapsulates one of the service learning projects that, of course, we will go against all odds of inequality by all means possible. And from the highest positions down to the most down-to-earth positions, we have the possibility to contribute to this process. And in this process, I would like to make a very special comment in connection to service learning work that grew and developed during this period.
Sometimes we think that because volunteers has no connection with the curricula, you don't learn anything. However, volunteerism, whether by students or by civil society organizations, allows us to develop competencies and skills and be formed as individuals. When I received the first dose of the vaccine, I was excited seeing students from the University of Buenos Aires that at 7 a.m. in the middle of winter in Buenos Aires, 4 degrees out in the streets, they were there at the vaccine station close to the river to help those of us that were there to be vaccinated. So I think that going back after the pandemic or during the pandemic, it's important for us educators to recover and systematize all this knowledge that was acquired during the volunteering work during the pandemic. And if possible, credit those specific knowledges that many of our students, many youth and kids have developed. And as never before, we should strengthen the transitions and the articulations between the volunteering programs and the service learning projects. And now to give way to some questions and answers, I would like to focus on two large challenges ahead. The first one is knowing that the world was not fair before. The world was not equal before. The environment was not fine before, and it's not going to be better after the pandemic. And that our projects should be able to face the tremendous social and economic and environmental consequences of COVID with projects that, besides being good-willing, should be effective and relevant. So we have to improve our diagnosis, understand that there are many needs, but we have to find in each case where it's more relevant, more pertinent to make a contribution, and where our students can contribute in a most effective manner. And the second thing that I would like to mention, maybe controversial perhaps, is that I think that this pandemic has revealed a process that had been going on for years that became much more evident now. And it's the importance and the limits of scientific thinking in this society that some call the society of the post-truth, of fake news. Or I Googled and I collected some pictures of some demonstrations in different parts of the world of people that went out to the streets. I don't need a vaccine because I have an immune system. COVID is a scam. there's no pandemic, vaccines kill, we have to question everything. And perhaps I would agree that we have to question everything if we're going to question everything from a rational thinking. But if we're going to question on the basis that everything is a scam, that the only true thing is the conspirational thinking, then we are in trouble. And all this that has happened during the pandemic that is happening, our American colleagues told me that they have hospitals full of people that denied to receive the vaccine, even though the vaccines were available. So this reminded me of something that Juan Carlos Tedesco said almost 10 years ago already at an international conference in 2012. He spoke of science and citizenship, and he said, we should assume that in this cultural context, so to sustain our ethical values, we need a lot of scientific and technical knowledge. Today, scientific literacy is citizen education. In the past, scientific training could have been related only to those that were interested in science and that had skills for scientific knowledge. Today, we all need to be scientifically literate to be able to discuss the topics in the agenda for the contemporary citizenship and participate in those decisions in a reflexive and aware manner. I think that this final participation of Juan Carlos Tedesco in our conference, he passed away a couple of years ago, was like a prophecy of what we are living now. So in that sense, sometimes we represent our actions with the hands and the heart. And I would like to underline the risks of an emotional activism that develops empathy, but runs the risk of being not reflective and acritical. Service learning combines, as we say, heart, hands, and mind. That means that we need to intentionally develop scientific thinking and critical thinking. So in that sense, I repeat something that our colleagues from Spain, Rosa Vages, Charo, as we know her in the world of service learning, she used to tell us of a project where kids had helped eradicate a plant that was a pest in a river, but they didn't know the name of that plant. And they had been very enthusiastic and very happy, and they had developed a lot of skills, but they hadn't learned anything about that plant itself. And I thought that was a good example of how sometimes we can have naive services and light learnings that are not rigorous and that do not add up to the development of scientific thinking and critical thinking. We know that it is possible. So I invite you to visit in YouTube the experiences of a high school in a rural area in Tucumán in Argentina that throughout a research process with the National Institute of Agricultural Technology used the flowers of a very common plant in the Andes to produce natural pesticides that would not contaminate the environment and that would even be more economical because the risk of dengue still exists, even with the other pandemics. So I would like to give you some details about the project, but I don't have much time. So let me just say that it is possible. All the experiences we're going to share in the conference tell us that it is possible to educate with quality, educate with inclusion, and contribute to the transformation of reality in a single project that is well planned. And it is true that we don't give up nowhere in the world. This picture in the open air, on the floor, however we can, but we keep supporting our schools. This is the example in Macan in South Africa. In a way, this picture represents all the things that you have been doing throughout these times. So finally, let me just say thank you. Thank you mainly to our youth, our children, for being not the hope for the future only, but for being our hope in the present. Thank you so much. This is my contact information in Facebook and Instagram, and I think Enrique has some questions from the audience, right? Thank you so much, Nieves. Thank you first for sticking to the time available. This is essential, but mainly for the content for what you've shared. That was very, very good. Now, I would like to, well, we have the chat in YouTube. You can write your questions here. I have my colleagues here from CLAIS that will pass me the questions. So I will start with some questions, but we ask you to add questions in the chat in any of the 3 channels where we are broadcasting. If possible, questions related to Nieves' presentation, of course. I have a question here about the return to normal in the classroom. What do you think should be the role of the teacher when we go back to classes after the pandemic? Well, I think that our role doesn't change, whether we are behind a screen or whether we are in the classroom. I think our role in service learning projects is first to motivate and to accompany. During the pandemic, teachers have found thousands of creative ways of being with our students. And I think that classes in the classroom with the protocols, well, we should go back to that. We should give them an opportunity to know that what they learn can be applied to the service of the community. And in that sense, motivating, asking the hard questions, offering examples, showing good practices, showing what other children are doing. And if the children are attracted to it, or if they're doing a project, accompany them, but letting them be the protagonists of their own projects. We are just secondary actors. The leaders, the protagonists are the students. That's excellent. Somebody's asking, do you think that it's a time now for service learning to come to life in the Argentine schools? Well, we've been working for that for 25 years now. I think that in Argentina, we have some competitive advantages. The solidarity culture of our institutions, and also that the National Education Act ensures the practice of service learning. It's explicitly written in the law. There are many agreements from the Federal Council of Education that have provided guidance and support for the practice of service learning. There's a lot of case law. For those that are not in Argentina, we are a federal country. So even if the ministry at a national level says something, if the provincial ministries do not do anything about it, then things don't happen. And the truth is that there are many jurisdictions that have been promoting service learning for years as part of the public policies. So it is clear that right now the priorities are somewhere else, and that is the emergency. But that doesn't mean that we don't have the possibility of doing service learning. And in that sense, I think that the many and good experiences that we have in Argentina that will be shared in the conference reveal that service learning is very vital. If the question is, does anybody need to sign an executive order to make it mandatory and for the supervisor to come and punish the teachers if they don't do service learning? That is not the style we prefer. It's not the most effective method to promote service learning, we think. I think that what is effective to promote service learning is, as the Spaniards say, contagion. I mean, doing good service learning project in my school, my university, and that is propagated to the other schools and universities, and that is the way. So in this case, this is a positive propagation. Yeah, it's a positive propagation. There's a question that is more personal, I think. Have you ever lost hope? And in that case, what did you do to regain? It's quite a romantic question, but I think it's good in these times. I think it's a timely question. Because let's see, as we know in Argentina, and those that know us, we are used to moving from crisis to crisis. And the famous social and economic crisis in 2001 in Argentina, at that time, we coined a phrase that was, those that were more desperate were those that were doing nothing about it. And I think that service learning is a great injection of hope. And whenever I am tempted to give up, I think of the teachers and the children that are in extreme poverty, in very difficult places, in countries that have suffered devastating wars, in countries that have had lots of crises. They do service learning projects and they provide service to the others. And for me, that is a cause for hope. And it makes me think that if it's possible here, if it's possible there, it can be replicated. And it's worthwhile not to give in. And in my experience, besides hope, it's not the same as dreaming. I mean, hope means working hard to make it possible. So as the old saying goes, we are hopeful, but it's not just an illusion. It's a hope that we are working with many others to move forward and overcome even the worst circumstances. I hope that the interpreters are not suffering with all the phrases you are throwing. We want to thank them for their work. They are translating into English and Portuguese. My apologies for the interpreters if I spoke too fast. So we continue with the questions. There's a question here. How do you feel that service learning has changed your life and your way of seeing the world? Let's see. It's a good question because I always say that perhaps what introduced me into service learning was the fact that since I was a kid, I had the chance of participating in projects that, well, the first project, actually, the first solidarity project where I participated, if I had to evaluate it with all the tools we have now, all the assessment tools for service learning, the truth is that it was not well planned. It was not well organized. It didn't stay in time. It was not sustainable. You may think it was a disaster, but when I was 14 years old, that marked the rest of my life. And I believe in service learning because it happened to me. I believe in service learning because I know that I learned in volunteering activities, in service activities. There I learned things that no school or university ever taught me. I believe in service learning because of that. And in that sense, I think that perhaps those times where I did some service work, that was the more lasting learning that I obtained in my high school because I ensured that I don't remember anything about chemistry or physics or mathematics, but I do remember those days that I worked in a shanty town, and I think it marked a good part of the rest of my life. Good. Let me tell you that in the 3 channels, plus the people that are following here, we have around 400 participants connected. As I said before, this recording is going to stay online, so you can share it, you can disseminate it. I have another question here that can be interesting. What about running the risk of falling into this light learning and this naive service that you mentioned? What elements would be key to bear in mind and not to fall into those risks? It seems to me that the antidote to the naive service is not forgetting that reflection over the practice is an essential element of a service learning project, a quality service learning project. I'm going to share now the slide I didn't share before, because it seems to me that it's important to remind you of the journey of a project, and that In that journey of the project, reflection is critical as permanent evaluation. And part of the evaluation or assessment here, to reach a rigorous learning. Throughout the journey, we need to know what it takes and what we need to learn and research, and we need to evaluate that. Service learning project, it's not enough to have the community happy. We also need to know whether our children have learned anything, because if the community is happy but the students haven't learned, or they've learned the wrong lesson, then there's a part of it that isn't working. So in that sense, in the experience that I mentioned of the school in Tucumán in Argentina, most of the time was dedicated to scientific research, accompanied by scientists from the National Institute of Agriculture. They conducted a whole research and validation process for their experiments until finally they were able to produce this environmental spiral as an insecticide. But most of the project was the research stage. And in that sense, we have to assign the necessary time to make sure that what we are doing is serious. It's very clear. There's a question that I can answer if you want. How can we be a part of the CLAIS network? Those who have just joined us, CLAIS is a Latin American center for the promotion of service learning based in Argentina and Uruguay that works with networks and partners throughout the world. So you can go to clais.org. In YouTube, you have the social media. So pay attention to all the offered materials, courses, seminars like this. That's the way of being a part of CLAIS. But then if you want to write to us, you can write to the address there. You can contact you with the regional networks. I don't know who has asked the question from what country, but if you are from Mexico, we can contact you with a Mexican service learning network. If you are from Uruguay, well, you can contact our office in Uruguay. So you can contact us directly. Our social media, our email is in the description in YouTube, or also we can include it in the chat.
Hello, Elena. I hope you're doing fine too. Well, in all honesty, no one from CLAIS team knows when we're going to be going to Chile. So the question was, when will you be going to Chile? When will you be traveling to Chile? Please don't get too restless. At least so for the rest of 2021, we're not planning to travel anywhere. I could have answered that myself. I'm the one that asked you to get off the plane. Well, how do we grow true hope among our students who might feel despaired? Well, it's an open question. You approached it partially, but you might want to go deeper into how to create hope among students. In the last few years, I believe it's been quite clear that the global can be explained and worked locally, and that the local has to have the global perspective at the same time. If we just watch the news, and if we just watch news on global disasters, well, students and we alike will all get depressed. I believe that part of the task that we have to serve as educators is to help identify among those big problems that, tidbit of area where we can do something, where we can contribute. The example I was alluding to before, that of children who, the town authorities were spending money they didn't have on pesticides, putting themselves at risk They used their brain power to generate a natural pesticide. Of course, they are not working out on all the social and economic and sanitary problems brought about by dengue. They are not putting an end to mosquitoes, but they are bringing about a concrete solution to their neighborhoods, to their neighbors who they appreciate and value. So that bit of a changing their own reality, kept them going during all the pandemic. That project happened largely during the lockdown, and that keeps them going with other projects. So hope, it lies in knowing that you can do something about a situation. There is nothing that will go against any hope more than lack of learning and doing something. So we know that all of our children, all of our teenagers, all the youth, no matter if they have different skills, no matter if they have difficult economic situations, in the most adverse situations, they can do something. They are capable of doing something because they have a brain, a heart, and a couple of hands. So we have to be faithful in our children. We as educators, Sabater said that tamers will never be good teachers. To be a good teacher, you have to be an optimist. And optimism is indispensable in education. So we have to be optimistic in teaching our children, and we are the ones that have to be the first optimists. This is a question that we would like to talk about what we are doing in CLIES. From Cordoba, they say it would be quite interesting to articulate service learning with research to give evidence of the impact at all educational levels. Surely it is important, and all around the world, we have been trying for this to become a reality. I should say that service learning, from its creation, from its more rigorous creation, well, it's been up and running for over 50 years. There is an international organization of researchers on service learning from CLIES. We have been carrying this out every 2 years. Next year, we will have our 6th workshop for researchers, and all over the world, there are researchers who do research on service learning, but much at the same time, there are researchers who do research on their own service learning projects. And there's 2 types of research efforts that are equally important. On the one hand, research on the purpose of our projects. Many times, something essential in order for us to be effective. I remember a project that has a long-standing tradition from many schools of veterinary in Latin America. You know, offices to take care of horses, of scavengers or informal waste pickers. We call them cartoneros or cardboard pickers in Argentina and in Chile, and they get called different names around the world. When veterinary students were asked to take care of horses that pulled the cardboard pickers' carts, these students had never studied the pathologies of these horses who lived on the outskirts of urban areas, eating from garbage and coexisting with human beings in precarious situations. They had to do extensive research in order to find out how to treat those horses in their offices. And those guys who helped cardboard pickers have healthy horses would go to international veterinary horses to talk about equine pathologies in vulnerable urban settings. So especially for university students who are listening to my words, it is not contradictory to engage in service and research. Research has to be based on service. It has to be relevant. As the person from the chair of UNESCO will say, we need universities to do research on relevant topics for people and to make this knowledge available and handy for people. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, it is important that we who focus on education should do research on these practices, make them systematic and show evidence. There's a lot of research done on the impact of service learning on students, on educational institutions, on their surroundings, and in teaching practices. But we are only in the outskirts, only beginning this pedagogy, this teaching. So there is a lot that remains to be done. But if you're interested on the subject matter on CLAI's webpage, under the publication section, there is one section that is devoted to academic publications. There is one that focuses on research. Thank you, Nieves. There's lots of messages of greetings and appreciations. They are congratulating you. You will get to see that on your own on the chat. There's two comments along the lines of how to promote projects, how to get them started. I don't know whether you would like to extend too much on this because there's a lot of literature published on this, but if you want to provide some advice to those that will get started from scratch, how do they have to get started? As Kike said, we have lots of materials. The most basic manuals on our webpage talk about how to get started with the projects. There are manuals based on the educational level. Those are quite handy when it comes to that. On YouTube, there's also lots of footages on previous seminars where we devoted lots of sessions on how to get started with a service learning project. But in a nutshell, I should say that the first thing I would say is it is important to have the time to listen to what is it that we are concerned about our students, because motivation in order to go to the outer world will come from what hurts inside, from what concerns them, from what outrages them, from the surrounding reality. Many projects have gotten started because a teacher paid an ear to what it was that their students were talking about, or when he challenged a subject to be discussed. He asked them, who, in your opinion, are those that are not having a good livelihood in our neighborhood? Go out there and write down what you see around you. Georeference the garbage or the waste you see in your neighborhoods. Listening to, being motivated by is the first step. But there's one more important step, as I said before, trusting your students, believing they are capable of doing big things, and not setting back or taking a step back when faced with challenges. These are the first few steps. We have lots of manuals and technical, practical tools, games, and other tools in order to draw a problem tree, to diagnose situations, and to unleash conversations. Tools come along later, but first thing is to listen to people and to trust them, to be confident in them. And this includes initial education down to higher education, trusting the students, volunteer, young people. If we are in a community, in a grassroots organization such as an NGO, this includes kindergarten down to undergraduate and postgraduate students and community-based organizations. A narrative by many directors, head teachers, and teachers in general. Joe Doe and Jane Doe, who we know are the ones who sit on the last bench. Well, I didn't want them to be out there in the community because they would be an embarrassment. But to my surprise, John Doe and Jane Doe ended up being the natural leaders, and the community took delight in them. So don't ever doubt of anyone, because you don't really know what the transforming power is of service learning. We might learn that our kids have a number of skill sets, and if we have them put and silent, we will never unleash their full potential. When presentations are quite lengthy, there's lots of questions that don't get a chance to get asked. And today we are having a chance to talk about these questions and reflect upon them, and we still have lots of participants who keep signing on. So just a few reflections. I should say that the seminar gets started today, Thursday and Friday. The program can be downloaded from the website There's a pack of materials. Those that have come to our seminars, you know, you go back home with a pouch or a bag with publications and materials. This is virtual now. So there is a section on the seminar webpage. Do download those materials. The time is based on the Argentina local time. We will get started on the YouTube channel with the broadcasting tomorrow in the morning. If you haven't signed in already, you can always watch it on YouTube. If you have a teacher or a friend you'd like to invite, do encourage them to do so. Do subscribe, but you know, the topics that will be discussed tomorrow and Friday in the morning will be broadcasted via YouTube. And the afternoon sessions will also, they will have one that will be featured on YouTube. How about you have registered and you didn't get an email? We hadn't had many problems when it comes to that. So we believe that emails got to the majority of participants, but do not get despaired. If you didn't get the link, you just go to YouTube and you will have a seat, quote unquote, available to you. We are thrilled at having the number of people. This is our second experience. Last year, in August, the majority of teachers hadn't had a chance to go back to the classrooms. They were nonetheless engaging in teaching activities because schools never ceased operating. Classes were being delivered on WhatsApp, on Zoom, but they were staying home. This year, we're having a virtual seminar and the majority of teachers went back to face-to-face teaching. So we sometimes know that teachers won't be able to watch the sessions live because they will be busy working at school. But you should know that this will stay on the web, so you can always watch it later. I have a few more questions in connection to how to get funding for projects. There's 2 or 3 questions in connection to reflection instances. Nieves was saying that we have a lot of material, instrumental material to download, to see reflection instruments and project development, including how to get funding. We won't be delving a lot on this, but we should repeat again that CLISE has available material that are free downloadable from the web. So it's a matter of clicking on it and downloading it straight away. We have a number of training sessions and remote exchange sessions that will be available for educational institutions from around the world. Nieves, do I forget anything? Would you please let me know? Based on what I watched on YouTube, some people were asking qualitative, quantitative indicators. That is part of the research material. There's a lot about this on the literature. It's a matter of exploring them. If you just go to our page, you can Google it on our page or around the resources. So let's wrap up the opening ceremony. Nieves, thank you so much for your time and for your presentation. We would like to thank all of those that were online. We would like to close the day today. If we were face-to-face, we would be applauding for 1 minute, but well, it should be a virtual applause here to the teachers, to head teachers, to the staff members of educational institutions who managed during the entire year so far. And for the remaining 2021, I'm sure that this will be the case for education to keep going, for our students to keep receiving the education they so much need. And they managed to also engage in service learning projects. During the next 3 days, we will see lots of practices, whether hybrid or face-to-face, and service learning never stopped. And that for us is a matter of pride, because in many cases we joined institutions, but in many others we did not. So If we can do so virtually, then this is a virtual applause that goes to all students, to teachers, head teachers, leaders, and that have kept up education going. Of course, the different pandemics went by, not just COVID, but the difficulties in our communities. So I would like to close the day today on this note, with this homage paid to those people that I alluded to before with this virtual applause. Thank you, Kike. I'd like to thank everyone. I was saying that it would be weird engaging in 1 minute of silence as being here on YouTube, but I always like to quote the great poet and musician from Argentina, Atahualpa Yupanqui. He has a song that's called The Siblings. And of course, our Latin American siblings might have heard as sung by Mercedes Sosa. On that song, he says we have lots of siblings, brothers and sisters we cannot count. And this is part of service learning. And that, of course, we are the ones that stayed on, and predecessors died, but we will pay homage to them so that no one is left behind. We all have had some person who died around us. And I would like to also pay homage to those teachers that engaged in service learning that are not around anymore with us, our loved ones that we have lost, but they linger on with us because they keep accompanying us through their presence. And on this, I'd like to also make reference to include all, educators in formal schools and teachers from organizations, and also parents, mothers and fathers who in these long lockdown periods had to find a way to, juggle among lots of things, working from home and teaching their own children, or monitoring the educational components of their children. So in many cases, we did things right. We had a new relation. We found a new way to relate to parents. And I hope that this will stay on once the lockdown is over for good. Thank you to everyone, and we will meet up tomorrow. Thank you, Nieves. So we will be meeting up tomorrow at 10 a.m. local Argentina time on YouTube. Thank you.